The journey of the CR500 restoration, this has been some journey, I can say. But first of all, if I could just start off by saying, you know, I've always wanted the CR500, like any man. You know, to own a CR500 is like, is one of them boxes ticked. You know, you kind of do feel like you just feel like a man, don't you? You're a man's man when you've got a CR500, and you just, you know, let's be honest, nowadays you don't even have to ride them, do you? You can start them and just get an Instagram following like that. But you know, for me, that, you know, back in the day, it wasn't about that. I purchased a CR500 back in probably 2013, and I had it just sitting there. It was always my intention to restore one and to get one, you know, to get one up and running and to hit the track with a bike. Unfortunately, back then I had to sell that bike. I sold the bike to help out a friend, and I think in the end, you know, I sold it for something like 1,500 quid. And looking back now, you know, I do seriously regret selling that bike. And then all of a sudden, you know, back to this bad boy. You know, the bike come around from a friend of a friend. So pretty much the next day, you know, I'm there meeting the guy at a petrol station and purchasing the bike at night. And you know, I know the guy quite well, and I trust him. And we took the bike, and you know, pretty much I think 5 days later, you know, we go up to Fat Cats and I try the bike out. And it comes to my attention that the bike's vibrating quite a bit, and there's maybe a few hidden problems with the bike that wasn't apparent that first off. I'd already spoken and primed up, you know, Doc Wobbs to give the bike a full once over, and you know, and that guy's got some serious amount of kit around him with some trick bits for these two-stroke bikes. So I was you know, I was always taking the bike there. And then you know, one time we rode up at Apex and dropped into Doc Wobbs on the way back. He got the bike on his workbench and then pretty much tore the bike to pieces. So, you know, we're looking at this bike, and he goes, "Oh, you've got a good one," you know. And then all of a sudden, I pointed out, I said, "Look, the bike was vibrating a little bit. You know, the radiator's got a leak in it." And then he looks over at the frame and he's like, "Oh, well, kid," you know, Doc Wobbs style, "Hey, kid," like, oh, the frame. So we had a look at the frame, and you know, where it was cut and kind of shoved together. We were trying to figure out what frame it had on the bike beforehand, because it certainly wasn't a CR500. And then you know, we started, but I knew that with the frame anyway. You know, I thought it was a conversion. It was a 250 two-stroke conversion. I'm not sure on that now, but anyway, he's like, "Oh," you know, he said, you know, I'm not too keen on that. We've got to get you another frame." You know, next thing you know, Wobbs has called over the other mechanics, and then all of a sudden, that's it. You know, it's totally sunk in, and basically it's hit home that these guys just really do know their onions and want to rip this bike apart.
What's this hole in the frame for?
No.
There's a hole in the frame, yeah? The headstay we got doesn't line up.
Yeah.
So the engine's in the wrong place in the frame.
Yeah.
The engine's actually sat like that.
You know, they're looking over the bike, and they're just like, look at the chain, you know, spinning the rear wheel, and the chain doesn't quite line up with the front sprocket, the front and rear sprocket, so that's all out of sync. It's not quite right, you know. And then they're like, oh, look at the engine mounts, and you know, it just goes on, you know. And they're like, well, I always knew that the suspension was something a little bit newer, you know. It was from a 450, I was led to believe, and it had the 450 wheels in the bike already. So it wasn't an 18, it was a 19-inch rear. You know, but they're like, oh, you know, I'm not too sure about that. I'm not too sure about the airbox. And before you know where I am, I'm like, look, I said, just take the bike to pieces, just crack on. Let me know, you know, let me know where we are in a few months. And unfortunately, a few months escalated. We couldn't get hold of a frame or a decent enough frame for the project that we wanted to do, and time was ticking on. And we kind of missed that window, and then all of a sudden, you know, the brakes were on the project a little bit. It was just like, you know, don't worry too much about it. You know, we can take our time now with this. Thankfully, Doc Wobbs found me a good frame in America, and he had that shipped back, and you know, they stripped down the frame and then put the skid plate in and welded all that in, and it was all nice. And I just went up and picked up my CR500, you know, just it was just box of bits. So then that, you know, when we got to that point, I was like, right, okay, let's have a think about this. You know, word of warning is that if you're going to buy a bike, you know, make sure that you really do thoroughly look over the bike. Just maybe some people's builds are a lot different to other people's builds, you know, and the way that they spec the bike and what they do. So you really do have to be careful, otherwise you're going to be throwing some serious money away, and these things are a money pit. You know, they definitely are a money pit. I know people say, you know, to purchase one and always would like to do it themselves, but that comes at a cost. Definitely comes at a cost. Yeah, so as we was at that point, you know, it was make or break, and I just pretty much, that was it. You know, we went to town. Yeah, so I took the engine straight up to Mark Eastwood. You know, he's a Honda dealer, and you know, he loves the old two-strokes, and he used to ride the 500s back in the day along with his brother Scott, and you know, what they don't know about two-strokes isn't worth knowing. Yeah, and Mark pretty much stripped the engine apart and looked at it, and yeah, we found some gremlins and some little problems in there. So the cylinder it looked like it had definitely been ported, you know, and probably the guys at Holland had probably done that, looking at the material that was kind of missing from it. I think Mark sleeved it, you know, and it got that all dialed in, so that's all good. And the gearbox, there's you know, parts are so hard to find, and some of them have obviously been discontinued, and I know that in this engine that, you know, there's a couple of gears there that if they would have been available, we definitely would have had them in a bike. So, you know, we know that there's nothing to be worried about. They've been dressed up, but certainly I would definitely have had them in the bike. But that's not an option. So, you know, but like I said, this bike's going to be ridden, and you know, if it does start showing any signs of wear, which it didn't, you know, and there was no problems with it, then we'll address that and look to these aftermarket companies that maybe are making these parts. You know, we put all new bearings in, a new swinging arm bearings, new linkage bearings, and I'd even misplaced one of the spindles that goes through the swinging arm, and through the shock linkage, it was quite funny, really. So yeah, you know, you can't even get them anymore from Honda, so we had to get those. They were a CNC machine from some company, I can't remember, one of Mark's contacts, but yeah, he made us a nice new spindle to go through, or a bolt, and it's a pretty long bolt though, to be fair. So yeah, it's more like a kind of a spindle, but kind of messed with my brain a little bit because the spindle was so long, and then I found, you know, all of a sudden I'm looking through there, and there's these massive spaces that basically, you know, they sit either end of the spindle, or either end of the swinging arm, the arms, and the bolt goes on there. But unless you've been working with the bikes in that era, or you know, or you are, you know, through and through a 500 man, then you wouldn't know. And the same thing regarding with the carburetor, really, as well. You know, the carb on the bike, it was it was the right carb for the bike, but it had some work done to it, so it was a different shape. So we got that sorted and got got a genuine carb to fit and work on this bike, and then the suspension as well. I thought, you know, if we're there with that engine and we don't know, then let's have a look at the suspension. Yeah, sure enough, he took the shock. I don't know, it's the shock, a 125 shock, and I think there was a few problems with the front forks regarding shim stacking, so they all got put into place. And then, you know, while I'm at this stage, I'm thinking, right, okay, so we really got to go to town a little bit more. So, you know, as you do, I went and got the bike Cerakoted and certain parts Cerakoted, and you know, McNeely Brown, he basically, you know, we just tickled along there, and he did what he could, doing bits and pieces there, and also the swinging arm, and powder coated the frame, and you know, so it was just a bit more of a slower project, you know, and we was just taking our time, and finally got the bike put back together, and you know, started dressing it up a lot nicer. Got some Boyson clutch covers and ignition cover and rad block, and the guys at Apico looked after me with a load of different parts, and ODI sent me some grips, and I got the Ricky Carmichael Bender bar, ODI bar. And SM Pro, they helped me out with some wheels, and Michelin with some tyres. And the radiators, you know, they looked like they'd come kind of, they'd come from China on some kind of export or something like that. They were just, they weren't pretty. They were not pretty radiators, that's for sure. So I got GMX to make me some radiators up, and, you know, and Bolt as well, you know, that out of America, they sent me over a bolt and frame kit. And, you know, from that point, it's just endless, you know, because all of a sudden, every time, even to this day, I still look at the bike and I'm like, oh, there's some other little bits that need changing and need some doing, like the brake hoses, and there's the rear brake pedal, and just some other little bits and pieces that all need doing. But yeah, we get there, and, you know, and pretty much, you know, my hand was getting forced, you know, to get this bike done. And the guys at Boyson were keen for us to, you know, to do a promo video and to get some of the products out there, and, you know, and we was keen as well. And obviously, that, you know, as the time's ticking on, and in the UK, you know, due to COVID, you know, our time was ticking too. And, you know, we went to my track at Sellinge, and we got there and we put the bike kind of still together, just at, you know, and some funny tales to happen there, you know, like the bike already had oil in it, but I double filled it, so we had to have the oil out and just put some plastics and some other different pieces on the bike, and put the stickers from 09 on at the, you know, at the track, you know. And we just needed to get the bike running. And it's quite funny, really, because there was a few little pieces, genuine bits that I was waiting, sort of like exhaust brackets and things like that. And at the time, the exhaust that I had on it was the original exhaust when I bought the bike, so it wasn't the prettiest. It was, you know, it was good, but it weren't the prettiest. So we had to kind of like hide that, and then also when I was riding the bike, the suspension was too soft. So, but, you know, we got it done, and we got the video done, and I rode the bike and really enjoyed it. And then the next time, you know, there's no cameras obviously, and next time when I ride the bike, I'm loving the bike even more. And yeah, then now, like, again, the work's begun again, because when I started riding the bike and putting a moto in on the bike instead of, you know, just shooting for the video, I'm beginning to think, oh, you know, I can nick a bit of time here. I can feel a bit more comfortable there, and the rear shock's a bit soft, you know, or maybe, you know, I can change the gearing, and I can definitely work this gearbox a little bit differently, the way that it was working around the track. And then the guys at DEP, you know, they made me a trick front pipe and a nice silencer, and it just progresses. And regarding on jetting, you know, again, I'm not too sure, because I haven't gone mega overboard with jetting the bike, but, you know, I just pretty much looked up what was there on the internet, and, you know, and then put in and spoke to a few of the other guys, and, you know, they were like, yeah, that's a good ballpark setting to start with. And I mean, and I didn't need no detonation, and again, like, I certainly wasn't asking for any more power. You know, when I was saying to you about tweaking the bike, you know, I'm talking about changing the gearing. You know, when I'm riding around Sellinger, and I'm coming into turns and ticking it over in third and fourth through like tight hairpins, then, you know, then we've got to look at the bike, really, because it's, you know, I just want them gears to stretch out just that little bit longer. Just when it gets a little bit tacky in the ruts there at the end of the year, when the ground got good, it was definitely like just pulling into the ground so much that I just wanted to just change the gearing about, and just try and get a little bit more out, a little bit more stretch from third. And that's because, you know, again, when you do ride through that rut, or ride around that turn, and all of a sudden the power is going to kick in and hit hard at certain points that you do want to short shift. So and just down the straight, man, what's so much fun is, you know, when you're taking off and you just land and the bike just wants to just drive forward. And even just off some of the singles, when you just send it, you know, the bike's just instantly just there pulling and just driving, and you can just feel it's just eating the ground up, just destroying it. And you know, that's all part and parcel of the CR500. You know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, why probably everybody wants one, everyone desires one, but not everybody can ride one. You know, if we're being open and honest, you know, when the CR500s were there and they were still in the production run, you know, they died out, and they died out because people were favouring the 250 more, because, you know, in all honesty, they couldn't ride the 500. And it's just funny now that the 500, you know, is more desirable and everybody just wants that 500. Trust me when I say that, you know, it hasn't stopped because, and it's not going to stop because there's certainly a few little different things that I want to change, because this bike is a bike that's going to be ridden. It's not just a bike that's just going to be like shown, you know, and have, you know, of course it's going to be whacked up on the gram and all over Facebook and, you know, at every opportunity. Let's be honest, when the sky's out, you're going to take a picture of your CR500 and give it big licks, aren't you? You know, it's just part of owning such a prestige bike. But yeah, this is definitely a bike that's going to be ridden. So we want it running sweet. Definitely want it running sweet. But as it, you know, from a kind of get go from where it was to where we are now, this foundation, you know, it's night and day difference. You know, like the first time when I rode it around Fat Cats, you know, it's just like, yeah, it was kind of shaky and wasn't running quite right, and you know, the jetting was off, and then to just, like, you know, putting it together, like I say, at the track, and all of a sudden going out and ride it. Even then, you know, I was like, yeah, this is a machine, you know, we can get going on this. But now, you know, and since then we've progressed just a little bit more, and it's just, as you can see, it's just one of the, it just puts a smile on my face just thinking to myself, yeah, that's my bike.